So I'm going to jump right into this. Look, I know exporting's been really tricky. We've got COVID-19. It's been hugely disruptive, really. And just to give you a very quick rundown of the sorts of issues that we're focused on your behalf. So shipping and logistics obviously is huge, and we're basically talking to a big bunch of importers and exporters about the possibility of bulk break charters. So I'm not sure if that will come off, but there's active discussions going on to try to get those charters going for the exporters and importers for which it's best suited. Critical business travel, MIQ spots, we've heard a lot about the pain around that. So unfortunately we don't have anyone from MB here because they're the ones that normally are in charge of that system. We're trying to get some early vaccinations for critical business travel, and that's pretty challenging. We're hearing you about the shortage of staff and talent and the difficulties of getting people across the border and those immigration settings. So anyway, we're working on all of that. It's hard and it's difficult. But here to help us today is a bunch of agencies. They're going to speak for 5 minutes each because we really want some good Q&A. So I'm going to be giving them the old tap on the glass if they go over their 5 minutes. But I have to say that we've definitely seen them working incredibly hard behind the scenes. They've all been disrupted as well, and we've been really pleased when we go to them with our Export New Zealand hat on at the quick responses that we get. So we're grateful for that. Right, so kicking off first, we're going to go to NZTE and Sanchia Yonge. Sanchia.
Do I have a mic? Do I need a mic?
You do have a mic.
Hello.
Yes.
Tēnā koutou katoa, and thank you, Catherine and MFAT. It is fantastic to be here with such a wonderful audience, along with my colleagues from NZ Inc. Look, Pete's made my job really easy because he's covered pretty much everything I was going to say. So, Catherine, I promise you I'll just talk for 2 minutes, not 5, and just do a quick recap. Look, 18 months into the pandemic, it is a really useful time to update you from NZTE. We've had quite a bit of change, but one thing hasn't changed, and that's that NZTE exists to grow companies internationally for the good of New Zealand, and we are here for all exporters. We've got a team of 800 people around the world that are very committed to helping New Zealand exporters turn their global ambitions into global reality. So the big message from us is that we've been scaling up to support this trade recovery. The first point Pete made earlier was that we have doubled our focus portfolio. These are customers that we work with intensively to help them with their growth plans. We've also added boots on the ground, largely in the markets where we've had greatest demand, so North America and Australia. And while, as Pete said, many of our offices are closed, our people are really committed and working really creatively and flexibly to support New Zealand exporters working from home. But the big play for us, which is very, very exciting, is the launch of our new digital platform, MyNZTE. It's free, it's easy to register. You just Google MyNZTE and you can sign up, and you can access the latest market insights that we are sourcing from our people on the ground and regularly refreshing that content. So you can set your preferences on MyNZTE and be able to learn about the markets that you're most interested in. And it's also a great platform for all of our foundational learning curriculums and tools and assessments that you can use to help you. Now we know that content alone is not going to help you make those decisions. So by going on MyNZTE, you can also access live chat with our customer advisors who can not just navigate you through NZTE, but they can also navigate you across the ecosystem, because we're really committed to being joined up across all our fellow agencies. We can also support you through my NZTE with Invest Ed. So if you're looking to be investment ready or raise capital, that's a great place to go for financial tools and to be able to take that first step with our investment team, as well as our digital commerce learning curriculum and sustainability assessment tools and content. We're also known for a number of bespoke services that you can access. As Pete said, look, the real power of NZTE is that we curate and qualify a network of providers and experts that we can match you to by understanding whatever it is, the problem or challenge that you're looking to solve. So whether that's in supply chain, I actually have one of my colleagues here who's our supply chain expert, or business continuity or cash flow, all really critical issues in times like these. We have bespoke services that we can match you to. And if you're working with a customer manager, we can also help you apply to the International Growth Fund, which has been doubled as part of this COVID recovery strategy. We've also increased our support for Māori business, so we have a dedicated team that is working with Māori business. That team has rapidly grown, and we've also been bringing on more Māori capable experts and providers into our network. And finally, we have recently just reorganised our New Zealand customer-based team around three key sectors, so for manufacturing, food and beverage and consumer goods, and also tech and services. So in that way, our customer team will be even more efficient and impactful for getting you the knowledge and the expertise that you need if you're in any one of those sectors. And it's also a great way for us, organised around those sectors, to be more effective connecting up across the ecosystem. So today's a great example of this, and I think Catherine and I managed to stick within my 2 minutes. Thank you very much. I look forward to lots of questions. That's why we're here, not to talk, but to hear what's on your minds.
Fab, thank you so much. Passing along now to Peter Lewis from Customs. Not sitting in order.
I think I just got told off.
No, not at all.
Well, I've been
Your
at school.
timer starts now.
Good morning, Peter Lewis, New Zealand Customs. My role manager for the service delivery team, with a focus on import customer support, which is what today's about, I'm guessing. Just want to briefly talk about imports and then move on to exports. But imports, you know from the slide, you can read $15 billion revenue collected. We know the value of that. 13.1 million transactions, import and export per year using our TSW system. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it's a combined border agency electronic clearance system. So customs and MPI. That means when you or your broker lodge an import entry, it goes through our system 99, don't want to be too accurate, but 99.1% automatically cleared with delivery within 30 seconds. For New Zealand, it's a great piece of technology. For some, there are issues, but generally, majority get a good system. For COVID, a whole new world, as you know, and a focus on making sure that importers do not get disrupted with their goods. So we implemented a critical supplies team, still going, with a focus on ensuring that any critical supplies, such as masks, and you know we had an issue with the supply of masks, gloves, vaccine is a good example, do not get disrupted at all during any part of their journey internationally. And so we have an email address. If you go to our website on the internet, you can find out the critical supplies email. But simply put, for an importer, if your goods are held anywhere through the movement from the supplier to New Zealand, you reach out to us and we do the dog work about finding out where they are and what the problem is. And as we've talked about earlier in the discussion, it's a multi-agency involvement. So if we can't find it, MPI, NZTE, someone else will work it out for you. And all you need to do is reach out to one place and we just spread out. And we're fortunate enough to be a small country with a great relationship, so it is easy to sort out. So do not be afraid to push the send button. If you are an importer, you pay duty, you should have a client deferred account with us. And during COVID, there were a large number of importers who had trouble paying their duty and GST. And we managed a system where our revenue management team had a one-on-one relationship and discussed about the payment methods. I think we went to, don't quote me on the figures, but $60 million owing initially in duty and GST, and it's now come down to 60,000. So that's a really good positive sign. So let's move on to exports. I just want to do a plug here for a relaunch of a program we've got going since 2005. And if you're not familiar with the Secure Export Scheme, it's a program that we worked out with the United States as a result of the 9/11 events in 2001. And if you're an exporter at that time to the US, you know full well that what they did was they shut their borders due to a terrorism event we're all familiar with. If you take it to today's environment with COVID, as you know, on the wharf right now, there's huge disruption internationally. So talk about different types of scenarios, but for the 9/11 event, the issue we had was trying to get the goods off the wharf at Long Beach or any other port in the US, and you as an exporter, your goods would have sat on that wharf for weeks. So we reached out to the US and discussed with them about a security arrangement and trust. So, you know, today's terminology is trusted trader. We have an agreement with 9 MRA countries, and I think they're on the second slide. Not on that one, but one before. So 9 MRA countries currently in negotiation with the UK and Thailand. And interestingly enough, with the UK, normally it takes us about 1.5 years to sign up, but we get an impression from them that they're good to go, they want to get done and dusted. And that will give us the ability to do a customs-to-customs relationship around trusted trader. So if you want to be a part of the Secure Export Scheme, you need to come and see us. What it means for you as an exporter is that there is greater chance of your goods not being held by overseas customs agencies. Oh, blimey.
That's your time.
Is that 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, cut. So please come and see us across the other side. We'll talk about SES. For you, it's of immense value. Thanks very much.
Now I can't turn the duck off. Might have to have a new system. Okay.
That'll teach you.
Okay, moving on to MFAT. Jacinta Gould next.
Thank you, Catherine. Kia ora koutou. I'm Jacinta Gould from the Trade Recovery Unit at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Our team was set up last year explicitly to help exporters with COVID-19 related trade disruption. Vangali has already described to you the 3 pillars of the trade recovery strategy: the retooling of support for exporters, the reinvigorating of international trade systems and international trade architecture, and the refreshing of our key relationships. To put it all in that framework, my unit has a role in terms of coordinating across government on all of those areas, but a particular focus day to day on the retooling of exporter support services and actually delivering those services to you. As we've heard today, COVID-19 saw the introduction of numerous ad hoc trade barriers, export controls, serious disruptions to global supply chains, a sharp decline and disruption in our global air and sea freight connectivity in New Zealand. And that's why the work of my unit includes working with other agencies to provide the necessary support, the tools, the market intelligence to navigate this disruptive environment. And we're very conscious of also the added difficulties of not being able to get into your markets to grow business opportunities. We want to ensure that the NZTE global network, and that is MFAT and NZTE and a number of other agencies in many, many locations around the world, is available to you. I'd further break down our work into 3 little buckets. One would be the specific responses on supply chains, because we have recognised the importance of, well, I think we always knew, but COVID-19 brought it into sharp relief, the importance of maintaining open and functional global supply chains for an island nation with our own limited manufacturing capability, not, backup sources from neighbours and so on. And supply chains have become an absolute strategic priority for New Zealand. And this is why New Zealand has led the way and initiated a number of joint ministerial statements with key trading partners to ensure that all countries remain committed to open supply chains, despite, in many places, the pressure to turn inwards and prioritise populations closer to home. And the Minister this morning mentioned the particular outcome from the APEC ministerial meeting around vaccine supply chains, but that's the kind of thing we're looking to promote as an agency. Also, we do the market intelligence reports that Vangali has already mentioned. We're wanting to make sure that we're increasing the accessibility of our offshore network, making it a two-way conversation and sharing more of what they're gathering in an accessible format. So far, we've published over 200 of these reports. I just remembered that there are slides behind me, and they are right there at the on our website on the Market Reports link. But as Vangali said, we really would appreciate your feedback on what more you want to see, what markets you want to see represented, what sectors you want to see explored, what issues you think are most important to your business in those markets. And then thirdly, we've established a work of our unit is to provide a dedicated contact point to monitor and resolve all sorts of trade barriers and offshore supply chain disruptions. And we do this by working across MFAT, particularly with our regional divisions, who are the experts on individual countries and individual markets, and work with the posts there to address issues. And with all of the NZTE agencies present here, and I will add MB as well. And what we want to do is make sure that we own these issues as you raise them with us. As Vangali said, if you put something into our trade barriers website, you will hear from us within 48 hours. And that will be to start the conversation to make sure we connect with the right parts of New Zealand government. Some of the examples of how this close engagement with businesses have worked have included, in terms of supply chains, for example, we've worked together with NZTE, thank you, and through our embassy with the Philippines government to ensure for Fisher & Paykel Healthcare that an electrical component supplier that was vital to their production of an essential medical device could be exempted from the Philippines lockdown rules and able to keep manufacturing in order to keep the manufacturing in New Zealand that was then supporting the world's health response going.
That's 5 minutes.
Okay. So my final message really is exactly what Vangali said. Please let us know if you've got any issues. Use the website. Niels, can you give a wave? Anjali, can you give a wave? And my colleagues from our Auckland office as well. Please let any of us know. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Next, we've got MPI, Neil McLeod.
Kia hi ora, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm Neil McLeod. I'm from the Market Access team in the Policy and Trade branch at the Ministry for Primary Industries. Just briefly touch on what MPI's role is with exports. As the Minister reminded us, we're from the government and we're here to help. MPI is here to help you ensure that your products are safe to consume, that the animals and plants in your supply chain thrive, and that your exports will not have an adverse impact on the health of people, plants or animals in the destination market. The Market Access team that I'm in works to find arrangements so that your exports can enter foreign markets without too many issues. A current focus that we've got in our work programs is looking at the $48 billion worth of exports from the primary sector. Maybe $15 billion of that is where we're actively trying to make sure that we're maintaining and improving the access that you've got for your goods across the world. Many of the issues that we're dealing with are for products where the importing country requires a government-to-government assurance that the products have been properly managed along their journey from the paddock to plate, or from the ocean onto somebody's plate. We are active in exports, but we do always have to remember that we need to treat our partners overseas how we would want them to treat us. So the trade is a real two-way street. We can't ask for rules for our products going into other markets if we're not prepared to apply them in New Zealand. Some of the tools we use in our work, we don't have the economic might or the size to be able to thump the table in negotiations. We do, though, have good relationships. We've got credibility around the world. We've got a reputation for doing what we say we'll do and delivering safe and high-quality products. Every year we survey across the primary industries to better identify the issues that are affecting their growth. We draw up a prioritised work program according to estimates of return on investment, strategic fit and the feasibility of getting an outcome. We work closely on international regulatory standards so that our small voice can get amplified, and we're part of the government trade effort right across here, looking for instance to have workable standards set up in free trade agreements. We work with other agencies, especially maybe MFAT, providing technical input into their trade policy work. And across wider MPI, we've got a range of programs, especially directed at the recovery. We've got a Fit for a Better World roadmap, Primary Sector Council, He Waka Eke Noa, some of you may be involved in Te Taio. Trade in the COVID world has had an impact on our work as well, but perhaps interesting, didn't throw up as many regulatory issues for us to deal with as might have been expected. You've got issues we've heard about with logistics, getting your products into markets over the wharves, getting containers, finding staff available to clear products into a market. We meet regularly from MPI with regulators in Australia, Canada, US, and the UK and the EU to come up with solutions to COVID-related problems that may be emerging. We also continue to engage, although maybe at a distance, with other counterpart agencies in other key markets. We found that COVID did allow some streamlined processes actually for getting products across borders, like moving certification into an electronic space and e-commerce, both of which are goals that we've been pursuing anyway. And we've learned to set up remote audits of foreign authorities looking at our systems to continue to assure themselves that they're comfortable. So working for exporters, we also want to know what trade barriers you're facing at the border that constrain your ability to contribute further to our New Zealand economy. We've got a regulatory advice service, ERAS, which is there to support businesses and to help you navigate exporting requirements. And we'd encourage you to use that site if you've got anything to raise. We know it's not easy. There are a myriad of requirements out there, most of which are imposed on us by other governments overseas. But if you're in the system, you should be on the road to a continued worthwhile return for your efforts.
Right, thank you. Thanks so much. Sorry about the duck, but hey, it's effective. Okay, Chris Chapman from the Export Credit Office. Take it away.
Yeah, kia ora. I'm Chris. I head the New Zealand Export Credit. What you've heard today is on the panel, there's a variety of agencies here that are helping you get to market or breaking down barriers or building your capacity. Where our team fits in is once you've commercialised your product, you've got a sales opportunity, and you may feel you now need some support to give you additional financial capacity or confidence to make those sales. And we provide trade credit insurance and financial guarantees that might do one of the three solutions. One is mitigating your payment risk, one's helping you access additional finance from your bank, or it can be used in a way to help you secure your sales. And since COVID hit, we've directly underwritten or supported over $500 million of export transactions across 70 countries. So how do we do it? Well, one, around mitigating payment risk. Look, in these uncertain times, if you can get paid up front before you deliver your services or goods, that's great. But we know often the reality is you often may have to provide credit terms. And so then you're faced with the challenge of, one, is my buyer good for that? And then secondly, what if they don't pay? How do I mitigate that loss? So there are trade credit insurance providers who provide the due diligence on your buyers for a start, and then secondly, insure that. But there are scenarios where they may have less of an appetite, and that's true the case at the moment during COVID, where there might be certain sectors, certain geographies, where they're not as willing to provide that trade credit insurance on otherwise credit-worthy buyers. So if you're faced with the inability to get cover, you can come to our office. We provide that due diligence for a start. So if we also look at it and then come give feedback that we feel that not credit-worthy, that could be something to consider before continuing with your sales. But if we're comfortable with it, we'll sell you trade credit insurance. An example here is a food exporter that provided their food to airlines. So they got slammed 15 months ago. They're starting now to have new opportunities again with their previous buyers. But those buyers are either distributors or direct airlines, and they're wanting credit terms. So to mitigate that risk, they're looking to insure. Their sales are between 10,000 to a few 100,000 a shipment, but they just couldn't afford to have that bad debt. So we have provided our trade credit insurance to enable them to reinvigorate those sales. You saw in Pete Crisp's email around NZTE, there's a segment of exporters who are thriving, and many of those exporters have had trade credit insurance, but actually they want more on their buyers because they're selling more. And again, what we're seeing is some of the trade credit insurance will provide you cover, but only up to a certain dollar value. And so we have an arrangement with all of the 4 major trade credit insurers where we'll top up. We'll insure a higher level of your sales. And if that top-up is less than $1 million, we'll follow their underwriting. So it's a very streamlined and quick process. So that's helping you sell with confidence. Another one is helping you finance your increased sales. And so we have a product where if you and your bank come to us and say, hey, look, we've got a good credit-worthy exporter here, we've got a commercial prospect, but maybe for lack of security or other reasons, we're not prepared to extend the short-term finance that they need. Export Credit, will you be prepared to do that? So a case here is a company in the healthcare space. Just before COVID, it had already had a commercialised product. They used Manuka honey and also bee venom to produce skincare products, and they got the certification into the United States, and so sales have started to grow. But their cash flow cycle, they get a deposit, but from the time they pay their suppliers in New Zealand to where they get paid by a very, very credit-worthy buyer in the United States, it's 270 days. And that's increased again with some of the supply challenges they've had. So we've given our guarantee to their bank for a portion of that working capital to give them that ability to actually service these increasing sales in that space. And then finally, if you're a manufacturing or services exporter that deliver projects over multi-months, you may sometimes find that you'll be wanting advance payments and milestone payments, and your buyers might want that backed by a financial guarantee from your bank. And again, that can impact on your working capital. So we have another guarantee that we give your bank that essentially underwrites your ability to deliver that project. And an example here is a South Auckland company called Manco. They've just completed it. They made a bespoke remote control machine that laid a railway line for Sydney Metro's underground metro that they've just put in place. And our guarantee enabled them to free up that working capital that they'd otherwise have to use to secure those bonds to do it. So if you've got any other questions, my colleagues Pete and Michael will be over there at lunchtime and happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Perfect. He was bang on time, I have to say. Okay, Paul Millar from Immigration New Zealand next.
Kia ora tātai katoa, ko Pōmula Takawingoa, no hikinga whakatūtuki. My name is Paul Miller. I'm a relationship manager from the Immigration Engagement Team. As usual, I've put everybody out of kilter, so it's immigration to blame again. But here we are. Off the back of the last event in South Auckland, it was great to be able to come along and meet with some of the businesses that may engage or not engage with immigration, but are thinking about it. A lot of the work that we do is getting out there and talking to sector groups, talking to businesses, and finding out how your business kind of works and how immigration might fit or what the options are for you, providing education, advice, support. We're only a phone call or an email away. Always happy to provide advice and support where there's things that we can fix. And like I said, off the back of the last event, probably one of the best things was being able to get out and meet some of the businesses and find out what you do and talk about your options. So there's not just me here today. I've got a colleague of mine up the back, Carl. You can tell he's the guy with the silver hair. You can't miss him. He's up there at the back by the pillar. Come over and have a chat with him later on, or grab a card if you don't have time. So just a couple of things I wanted to touch on in our time, because it is limited. Something that affects us right now. Most people, when they're talking about labour and supply and skills and all those sorts of things, obviously immigration is the regulation or regulatory body responsible for controlling or facilitating the flow of people coming in and out of New Zealand. We're in this dynamic environment where there's a health ban, a health restriction, and that's been limited. And most people don't understand that I talk to that actually you need a border exception to be able to bring people into the country at the moment. So if you're not a New Zealand citizen or resident or coming from a quarantine-free travel zone, you're going to need a special exception to be able to come here before you can even apply for a visa. We do facilitate that process, and there is a high bar for being able to bring people in while there is a health crisis at the moment. So it is an exceptionally high bar to have somebody come in for what we call a critical purpose. Carl and I will be able to explain how that works to you. There are various caveats, different ways that people can meet that criteria, but it is a high bar, and we're happy to talk to you about how that works. The one thing we can't control is MIQ. A lot of people think that's an immigration thing. While it is inextricably connected to the immigration process, MIQ is a beast all of its own making. And we do say to businesses that you have to allow for that, for the MIQ process and timing, and be able to, either have a really quick finger or, know a very tech-savvy company that can help you and pay a premium to get a space. We know that things are booked up at the moment. Happy to talk to you about that process. Just something for the future for businesses out there. Some of you may or may not already engage with the immigration system, and it can be a minefield. Well, before COVID hit, we've been planning as an organisation to introduce a new work visa process called the Accredited Employer Work Visa Process. What does that mean for you as a business? If you're reliant on migrant talent and skills in the future, you're going to need to become accredited. It's a process we're looking to introduce by the middle of next year. And we're happy to talk to you about how that works. It is an employer-led process, which means that there is a form of accreditation that you'll have to undergo to be able to use the system and support a work visa in the future. Anything else immigration, happy to chat with you about, but that's me.
Great, thank you. Right, and next we're going to Ministry of Transport, Harriet Shelton.
Thanks, Catherine. Tēnā koutou. My name is Harriet Shelton. I head up the supply chain team at the Ministry of Transport. So just a few words about MOT. We're the government's lead transport advisor. So we advise government on transport priorities, and we help them put them in place. We provide leadership across the transport system. We work with our partners to ensure that people are well connected. And we maintain a long-term view of the way that the transport system is working and how it's performing. We're actually a very small ministry. We are really very much focused on policy and analysis. We don't tend to get involved in operations. That is left to our Crown agencies, such as Waka Kotahi, the Transport Agency, Maritime New Zealand, Civil Aviation Authority. They're the agencies that they do the doing. We do the thinking. So what's the role of transport in trade? Transport's really an enabler. It's just how people and goods get around. Every object in this room will have found its way here probably on a ship or a plane. Most likely a ship, because it's about 98% of goods coming in and out of New Zealand are by ship. And even local products that are produced locally will have had components that have come from overseas. So we all know that. Transport tends to really only get a lot of attention when it's not working. And so we've been pretty busy lately. It's been a bit of a roller coaster the last year and a half. And the first issue was when the planes stopped flying. In the case of air freight really only travels because passengers are travelling, because people are travelling. And the air freight goes in the hold of the plane. And so within quite a short space of time, we and a number of other agencies brought in the International Air Freight Capacity Scheme. And it's now been extended a number of times and is now known as the Maintaining International Air Connectivity Scheme. Because it's not just about air freight anymore, it's actually about maintaining connectivity. So that was the first problem, and then lo and behold, we had all this global disruption, which has been mentioned a number of times already this morning, and that has been continuing and is likely to carry on for at least another 12 months, possibly longer. And really, what's happened there is there's been an unexpectedly high demand for stuff. Because people are not spending their money on travel and experiences anymore, they're buying things to help them work from home, or because they've got spare cash to spend on luxury goods. And so at the same time that the demand has gone unexpectedly high, productivity at ports and within the supply chain and transport services, the productivity has actually gone right down. And so we have seen a continuous peak. No longer are we seeing peaks and troughs in terms of imports and exports. It's pretty much just a continuous peak. And so as a result, the transport sector just hasn't had a chance to catch up in the way that they normally would. So during the winter period, quite often, that is actually when ports can actually recover and regroup and get themselves sorted for the incoming peak season. That just hasn't happened. So we're seeing ships queuing up outside ports, we're seeing containers building up in yards, and we're seeing massively increasing costs, and I know all of you will be feeling that. It's extremely painful, and it's really difficult to find an easy solution. So what can we do? The supply chain system is actually really market-led, and it's been fairly minimal government involvement. It's been when the system works really well, and government doesn't really need to get involved, and it shouldn't get involved. And so we're trying to find ways in which we can help without messing up the market, without distorting the market, and getting in everyone's way, really. We've formed a multi-agency supply chain group, which is about 12 different agencies from around government, and we are working together to bring parties together where we can help them facilitate their own solutions. And a lot of the solutions can be by collaborating and by coordinating and working together. And we think a lot of the shorter term sort of mitigations are probably, they actually lie with industry. What we can do as government is we can take that bird's eye view, so we can gather information that we get from those on the ground, and we can provide a big picture and disseminate that information. We can help with addressing any barriers that there may be, getting out of your way if there's a particular regulatory issue or some other problem that needs to be resolved. We may be able to help there. The reality is, though, that there really isn't a quick fix, and where government can actually help most tends to be in the long-term solutions. We're starting work on a national freight and supply chain strategy. So a lot of the industry has been calling for this. We have quite a big program of work ahead of us, and over the next couple of months, we're going to be doing some pretty intense engagement with the sector and with exporters and importers, just to understand exactly what you think a strategy should be, what you think are the top issues, and what really needs to be looked at in the longer term. So we will be relying on people like Catherine and other industry bodies to get stakeholders together so that we can start thinking about where we want to focus. The last year has really exposed the weaknesses in the supply chain system and lack of resilience in our very, very lean supply chains. So we're going to try and find ways in which we can be better positioned for the future. So if you would like to be involved in the strategy, I have a mailing list over at the side over there, and come put your name down and you can find out how to be involved. Thanks.
Thank you, Harriet. And last but not least, Brett Roberts from Callaghan Innovation.
Thank you. Kia ora. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brett Roberts. I'm from Callaghan Innovation, New Zealand's innovation agency. Our organisation is named after Sir Paul Callaghan, who was a physicist, and he was one of New Zealand's greatest and most world-renowned scientists. He believed fervently that science was not only about great ideas, but it was about getting value from those ideas through innovation and commercialisation. His passion for New Zealand was that we have the potential to be so much more prosperous than we are today, if only we chose to work in higher productivity occupations based on innovative exporting. He was a man who was pretty good with the pithy quote, and the one that springs to mind is, "As a nation, we work hard at being poor." He had a new and real strong vision for New Zealand as a base for innovative export-focused entrepreneurialism, where a quality lifestyle could be combined with excellent educational and R&D capability. As well as being a superb scientist, he sought to understand and communicate how science and innovation can drive growth in advanced economies such as New Zealand's. Within our organisation, I think we're around about 450 people, and selling ourselves to the world and getting our brand out there is not our strongest point. We have a huge belief in Sir Paul's vision, and we absolutely share his passion for commercialising scientific research. Let's see if this works. Look at that. Slide 2. So these are the 4 main areas within which we focus our people, our energies, and I guess our passions as well. So we have a team of scientists, 200 plus scientists that work in our R&D services team, which is like an engine room of leading scientists and engineers. They're dedicated to solving tough technical challenges with R&D and innovation. If you have a science problem, an R&D issue that requires a warm body that wears a white coat and has a pocket protector, come and talk to us. We run innovation skills programs to provide specialist skills and knowledge for companies such as yours, and the discipline around R&D and innovation. And also we teach people how to think in new, different and innovative ways to reimagine the future. We are the front door for a number of funding mechanisms out of government for R&D grants, the R&D tax incentive, and last year, when the government was very worried about companies backing off quite dramatically on their R&D spending, we were the front door and the conduit for the R&D loan scheme that got $150 million into Kiwi companies, again, just like yours. And a really important part of what we do is connecting companies with the expertise, the people and the networks that they require, both nationally and internationally. We have expert advisors, we're connected and fund incubators and accelerators that can help take an idea from an idea through to commercial reality. New Zealand's very good at ideas. We're not as strong at commercialising those and taking those to the world. And we also provide a free online platform called Scale Up NZ, which profiles and helps connect ambitious, innovative Kiwi companies alongside investors and others who support them. Our website is www.callahaninnovation.govt.nz, which I think might be the world record for the longest government website URL. And I will be here around at lunch as well if anyone has any questions. Thank you.
I've got a couple of comments and a question. First of all, I'm sorry, the gentleman from immigration, I don't know if I forgot your name. My mental well-being would be well served by Foo Fighters and Coldplay coming to visit me for a concert, if that's okay. Could you arrange that for us? Chris, I'm really disappointed you didn't put us up on the slide, mate, but just underwrite the comments that Chris made. For those of you that haven't used export credit, they're absolutely fantastic, supported us and were instrumental in us winning the best restroom in the USA. So thanks for that. The last one's a question for the lady, sorry, from Ministry of Transport. I was very excited at the opening address around break bulk conversation. Love to be part of that, if I could. But secondly, I know the CBAF guys have put forward some ideas about potentially having a satellite port in Australia. Has that been mooted yet?
We are in regular contact with CBAF and we exchange ideas with them all the time. They're not the only people to talk about the role of ports and what could work well and what could not work well. It depends on your perspective. We have 14 ports in New Zealand. That's a lot of ports, but they all do play a different role. They all have their own part to play in the port network. It's safe to say we haven't made any decisions about whether any structure of ports should change within New Zealand or how we interact with the ports in Australia. But it's going to be one of the very key parts of the work that we're going to be doing going forward on our national strategy. And it may well be that there may be an opportunity to look at the settings for ports as well in terms of the way that they're governed and the way that they're owned, and then there may be a natural hierarchy that may emerge amongst the ports. So jury's out at the moment, but we'll see what happens.
Great, and maybe just while you've got the mic, a follow-on from me. So here we are, and you know, we have to look at some of this stuff's international, so it's a little bit beyond our control, but there's also stuff that is going on in New Zealand which is more in our control. So it's no secret that the ports of Auckland has been a big choke point on the import and export side. And also, from what I'm hearing, it was actually quite a struggle to get enough Kiwi rail carriages bringing stuff back from Tauranga. How are we going with the ports of Auckland coming right? And is Kiwi Rail doing enough?
Kiwi Rail has just increased their services from Tauranga to Auckland. They're now running, I think it's about 80 to 90 services a week. And so that has actually enabled Port of Tauranga to get back on track. Port of Tauranga were actually just as congested as Auckland was, and as a result their productivity actually went way down. And so the difficulty with fixed infrastructure like rail, even though obviously the rolling stock, the trains are not necessarily fixed, but fixed infrastructure is actually quite difficult to scale up quickly. And so Kiwi Rail they did take a while to actually be able to get those services back up to a decent frequency to and from Tauranga. In terms of Auckland, the biggest issue for Auckland in the short term is labour. They were struggling, the whole sector actually has been struggling with the shortage of labour, skills, specific skills in particular, for a number of years, and it's really that the latest disruptions have just really that's thrown that into really sharp relief. And those issues are very well documented. You know, a lot of people will have been following the stories about ports of Auckland. We have been trying to help ports of Auckland where we can, and that really primarily is around helping them to get labour if they needed to get it from overseas. Training up New Zealanders is also something that they're undertaking, but of course that takes time. And some of these jobs are actually they're actually surprisingly specialised, and they will take quite a long time to get people who are trained to a point where they can operate the machinery safely. Last thing we want is any more injuries or fatalities at the port. So we have been working quite closely with Immigration New Zealand to try and help them with to help the port with their bringing in extra workers. But the port is they are a port company. They are responsible for their own labour, and they really need to and they're working as hard as they can. I mean, I think it's probably fair to say.
Yeah, we are kind of aware that that help was given to get crane drivers in, but more were needed.
Yep.
And
so
that's
ongoing.
actually taken quite a long time.
Yep.
Was that an immigration issue, or are you getting support from that agency on that?
Don't want to throw immigration under the bus, but yes, there is a process that needs to be followed to get visas for these workers. Yep.
Yeah.
One of the other things I would say, though, to be fair, is that it's actually really difficult to get this labour from overseas anyway. Every port around the world is struggling with labour. And a number of ports we hear they have refused to give references now for their staff because they're losing staff to other ports such as Auckland. So they are all competing with each other to get the labour. Having said that, there are about 5 applications underway at the moment.
Great, thank you. Right, I've stirred things up. Your turn. Yep, over there.
My question is the Ministry of Transport lady again, sorry. I heard that the reason that they deferred maintenance on the Tauranga to Auckland railway line to fit that amount of trains in, is that true or not?
Can you just clarify, deferred maintenance on?
To fit the amount of trains, because they increased them by quite a lot per per week, and I heard that they deferred maintenance on the railway line.
Kiwi Rail definitely won't defer any maintenance where there's a health and safety requirement to make sure that that rail operates safely. What you may have been hearing is the remediation that's been going on in Auckland, which is a slightly different issue. That is an issue within the Auckland rail network that's affected the passenger services primarily, but it has also affected the freight. And that was one of the reasons why it took quite a long time to get those frequency of services turned from Tauranga back up to scratch. And so that is still something that Kiwi Rail are working through. Yeah.
Other questions or comments? Got this wealth of expertise sitting up here. Yep, good on you. Keep it interesting.
I'm sorry to hammer the transport, sorry. This one, it's just really throwing out the idea because this was one we posed to Minister Twyford and he did take it through to Minister Wood, I believe, around heavy airlift capacity for us guys that, we might have 10 or 12 tonne type shipments. And we did put some ideas together on 747Fs and Antonov aircraft once a month to transit around the place to get some of the stuff away from the boats. Have you had any discussions about that? Or I do know that it was discounted early in the process and they went to belly freight with Air New Zealand as the option. But I'm wondering whether there's been any discussions around that, around the table at operational level?
Not that I'm aware of. I must confess I'm less involved in the air freight scheme. It is very much market driven, so the airlines will be making those decisions rather than government. But I can certainly follow it up and find out more. Yeah.
Great. Other questions? I've got one then. Immigration. Paul. I believe, and I'm no expert in this, we've got someone at Business New Zealand who is an expert, so if you're having trouble with border stuff, let us know. But I think immigration, didn't you bring your processing back from China? You were getting a lot of the actual paperwork done offshore. It had sort of been outsourced. And I guess my question is do you feel like you're resourced adequately in New Zealand? Has that transition been smooth, or has that kind of created backlogs and problems?
Yeah, so if you're unaware, some of our footprint we've had to close because we've effectively had no visas being, nobody applying for student visas, nobody applying for visitor visas. And if you think about the two main markets where we had a big footprint, we've been having to, make some really hard decisions on that. And so we've had closures. That said, we were never processing those here. the resource that we still have in New Zealand is adequate to process temporary work, because we don't have as many temporary work visas as we would normally have coming in. That said, we're going through a big amount of change. Like I said, we're introducing a new system. We've got a residence program that was put on hold as a result of the pandemic. Under alert level 4, we had to residence is a program where everything is done on manual assessment of paper, whereas all our temporary visas are pretty much electronic, so we could do those online. So we weren't processing residents during that time. And then alert level 2, we were down to 40% capacity until staff were all able to come back. So are we being hampered in terms of visitors and students? No, because we're not processing those types of visas in any big volume. In terms of work and residents, well, we've been doing a lot of renewals and extensions to maintain the people that we have here lawfully so that they can continue to work and remain in country. Probably a good example of that is the likes of the RSC program. A lot of people don't know, but we've still got 7,500 RSC workers here in New Zealand. We normally have a capacity around about 11,000, I think it is, most summers when we're picking and packing. And we've got a program where we've approved border exceptions for 150 RSC workers every 16 days in cohorts to allow, obviously, for MIQ and timings and things like that. So in terms of resourcing, yes, probably we've got resourcing for residents issues in the sense that we've got what we've got. We don't have, a lot more people coming into the business. We don't have as much fees coming in as a result of applications. So, part of our funding, government funding, is not just Crown funding. So I hope in that ramble I've sort of answered your question, Catherine.
Thank you. You got a tough job. I'm not sure what time this is supposed to be finishing the session now. Cool. Okay, so these people are going to be here over lunch, so feel free to grab them and ask them the hard questions. And thanks everyone for listening, and thank you guys for all the hard work you do. Thanks.